It's time for Ask Mike Mondays. Mike answers one listener's question every week. Here's Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Ask Mike Mondays. I'm your host, Paul Peebles. Joining me today is Michael Becker.
Hey, Paul.
So, Michael, a lot of people want to kind of understand what good operating practices are. You put a property under contract, you buy it, close, and now how do you operate the property? So customers want to know, buyers want to know, what have been some of the typical issue problems that you've seen that have caused ownership groups to lose properties?
Yeah, back 8-10 years ago when I worked for a large national bank, I was unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I was kind of the grim reaper for a couple year period there where I had to go in and collect money and foreclose on some properties. So through that process, I had quite a few observations of what the bad operators did and what some of the good operators did. And I try to take those lessons forward with me when I'm doing my own deals.
Can you share those with us?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So some of the things that, the common reasons why I saw people lose properties in the last recession, really kind of come down just a handful of things. First and foremost, that you have property that you buy in the hood. So you just buy a property in a high crime area. You buy it because you think it's cheap, but then, the economy turns on you and then you realize why it wasn't cheap. It was just low priced. That was a reason why no one wants to own down in high crime areas that are far away from employment centers and good schools and access to public transportation, things like that. And another reason why I see people do is just poor management. So if you hire a bad manager, or worse, you live in California and you buy a 40, 50 unit property in DFW and you try to manage it yourself, but you're a UPS driver, for example. That was a real life thing that I saw happen back in 2007, 2008. And you just don't really have the oversight and the day-to-day policies and procedures and the bench strength within your management company to make sure that you're running these properties properly. You let in some bad element or you be lax on your collection policy and it just kind of snowballs on you. Another common issue that I saw were people coming in undercapitalized, meaning that they don't have CapEx set aside within the loan or out of the gate with initial capital stack to go in and cure all the deferred maintenance issues on the property, as well as, if you want to do an upgrade strategy of the units or the mini set, that you just don't have that money set aside. They think they can do it out of cash flow, and that just doesn't usually work.
That is an absolute failure to communicate. That just does not work. People who think that they can take the cash flow and rehab their property through the cash flow are absolutely wrong. The property, it gets worse. People who invested their money want to get a rate of return on their money, and so that money goes to them like an ATM machine. So those investors want to get their money back, and so they fail to put money back into the property. So we bang the table and say, go find another 2, 3, 4 investors, get another $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 per investor, put the money back into the property just to put the best property on the front side of the deal so you can raise rents almost out of the box.
Yeah, one of the things, a good example, what I like to use to illustrate this point is if you have a property and you don't have the proper money set aside and you're distributing all the free cash flow to your investors along the way, then you hit a little soft patch in the economy and your occupancy goes down or your rental rate soften or you have to give some sort of concession. And then you have a unit and you're in, say, Dallas, city of Dallas, and you have a property in July and your HVAC unit, your AC condenser on the outside goes out, and you don't have the $1,000 it's going to take sitting around to get a new AC condenser and get that unit going, and you have a tenant that's sweating in their unit, you're going to go to, say, a vacant unit. You're going to take that AC condenser from a vacant unit and you're going to put it on the occupied unit. And now you got a unit that doesn't have an AC condenser, so you have a down unit. You can't lease it. And then it snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And then all of a sudden the property gets broken, and the only people that are going to live there will be the undesirable tenant profile. And it's kind of just, you get crime and it just really snowballs. And I can't tell you how many properties Paul and I saw in the last recession that just, had a very similar story to that. So that's one of the major things that I've seen that people do it. And then, another problem that people had is you have a loan maturity at a bad time. So maybe you had a property, maybe you're over leveraged, you go in, last cycle people get 85, 90% leverage, only having put 10 or 15% down. Those days are kind of behind us on those loans. But if you have an 80% loan or 75% loan, the property goes down, say 15, 20% in value, and either your loan's what is as much or almost as much what the property's worth, and you have a loan maturity that just happened to have happened in, say, 2009, and the capital markets are frozen and you got to refinance it. Well, what you had to do at the time was was the bankers are going to say, okay, you got to re-leverage my loan. So you got to bring more equity in, pay my loan down, so I give you a 70 or 75% loan to value. And your partners are like, well, the property just went down. I don't want to give you more equity to pay the loan down. And you just had a situation where you had financing that matured at a bad time. So, taking a little longer term out, taking long-term fixed rates, maybe it's not the best necessarily to maximize the upside, but having that longer term debt really protects your downside in the event of economic turmoil. Because when these things happen, these banks stop lending. It's not like over a series of months or years. It's almost immediately when these events happen, the market kind of freezes up.
Protect your balance sheet as much as possible in these transactions. Some great advice, Mike. We appreciate that. If anybody has any additional questions for Mike, go to the oldcapitalpodcast.com, Old Capital Podcast. Go to the contact me section of that, ask your question, and we'll make sure we can get it back on so everybody can listen to it. So some great information, Mike. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, Paul.